Today I'm going to be answering a question that absolutely nobody at any point in time wanted to know the answer to. Can you beat Skyrim without ever breaking any of the 10 commandments? Before we get into this challenge, I want to make a quick disclaimer that this video is not a mockery of Christianity, Judaism, or any other religion. I myself am actually a Christian. But whether you're a Christian, Jew, agnostic, atheist, or anything else, I want to unite us all in what we all agree is the objectively correct belief. And that is that video games are freaking awesome. Another disclaimer that I want to make is that these are just some artificial rules I made for a video game challenge. Anything I do in the game does not represent my actual Christian views, and I cannot guarantee that the stuff I do in the game is biblically faithful or will survive scrutiny by someone that is an expert when it comes to scripture. At the end of the day, this is just supposed to be a way of turning my love of the Bible into a stupid and fun video game challenge for viewers to enjoy. So right off the bat, let's go over the 10 commandments themselves. Thou shalt have no other god before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Honour thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbour. Thou shalt not covet. We are going to translate these into some rules for us to follow while we're playing the game. For the sake of simplicity, we are not going to include 4 commandments in these rules, because it is not actually possible to break them in the game. The first one we're going to remove is the one where we say the Lord's name in vain. Since our character can't actually speak beyond using shouts, it's actually impossible for him to say the Lord's name in vain. The next commandment we're going to remove is honour your father and mother. At no point is it ever established that there are any parents we have in this game, which means that breaking this commandment is impossible. The next one we're going to remove is thou shalt not commit adultery. There is a marriage system in this game, but the game doesn't actually let you marry more than one person. And there's also no hint of romance in this game beyond the marriage system. We're also not going to marry someone in the first place, because doing that will actually require an amulet of Mara, and I'll get into why that's relevant later. The last one is you shall not covet, which basically means do not desire things that belong to someone else. This is basically impossible to track, and I think we basically abide by this as long as we don't steal. So as a result of this, we have 5 rules to follow. I felt like choosing to follow these rules in the way that they probably actually meant was a little too easy. For example, thou shalt not kill probably means that you don't kill unlawfully. So for example, self-defense is okay. I felt like this was boring, because this means you could get away with killing anything that attacks you first. So for the sake of making the challenge more fun, we're going to interpret the commandments literally and at face value, and also just upping the difficulty for certain rules, just for the sake of adding an extra challenge. Rule number 1, don't be positively affected by anything linked to a false god. This means that we can't use anything that's linked to a god in the game. This includes any sort of spells. The reason we can't use spells is because according to the Elder Scrolls lore, spells are linked to the god of magic. The only exception we have for the type of magic we can use are shouts. The reason being is because apparently shouts are descended from something separate to magic and are actually inherited by dragons. Since dragons aren't gods by any means, we should be okay here, which is convenient because there is absolutely no way you can complete the game without using shouts. Rule number 2, sleep for 24 hours in a bed when it's Sunday. I didn't want to overcomplicate the Sabbath day rule, so I simply just made it this. Rule number 3, don't kill. That's literally all there is to it. There is no exception or any kind of nuance to this. Any sort of killing that you do breaks the rule. Rule number 4, I decided to up the difficulty for this, and that is that we don't take anything that would be considered stealing in real life. This means that we're not just covering stuff that has the steal label. An example of this would be taking an item from a dead body. When someone's dead, Skyrim doesn't consider this to be stealing. But in real life, this would absolutely be stealing, because this would belong to the family members of that dead person. This is going to be analysed on a case-by-case basis, since there is nuance to stuff like this. An example of this is if you're taking an item from someone to return it to the original owner, because the item was already stolen. The final rule is don't lie. This basically means that if we promise to do something in the game, we have to follow through on it. We should never intentionally try to deceive someone. Now that I've got all that rambling out of the way, without further ado, let's see if we can beat Skyrim while following the 10 commandments. After we go through the opening cutscene, I create a Nord character, and I thought the best possible name I could give him was Christian. For whatever reason, a horse just decided to appear right in front of my face. I think this was because of some Creation Club content I installed that was free because of Bethesda's 25th anniversary. When going inside of Ralof, it looks like we've already hit our first obstacle.
You may as well take on your skier.
Clearly Ralof doesn't follow the 10 commandments. As we've established before, looting someone even when they're dead is considered stealing. Luckily, we simply have to click on the body and then exit, and then the next part of the quest triggers. If you decided to go with Hadvar, the same applies to opening the chest and closing it. I also consider looting a chest that doesn't belong to us to be stealing. And then when it comes to looting other things, like stuff in the world, we should only be allowed to loot it when it seems to just be a lost item, and not something that seems to belong to a particular individual. Initially, I thought there was going to be a challenge here, because I thought there would be a part where we would have to take a key from a dead body to open a door, but it turns out I was wrong. In Hadvar's case, he already has the key. In the case of Ralof, he loots it from the body himself, so therefore Ralof broke one of the commandments, but not us. I ended up deciding to stick with Ralof. We end up escaping without having to loot any bodies or containers or killing anyone. So for now, the rules are yet to be broken. However, we have no weapons, armor, or gold. Weapons are mostly useless because we aren't allowed to kill anyone, but armor will be important if we want to survive for more than 5 seconds. Having a shield will also be useful because it will help us reduce even more damage, and it will also increase a blocking skill, which means that this will be a way that we can level up. Being low level and facing Alduin in our prison rags is unlikely to go down well. I end up speaking to Gerda, even though I don't need to in order to progress the story. I then make my way to Whiterun. I end up challenging Hrothgar the Unbroken so I can get her as a follower, only to realise that I don't actually have the gold to challenge her. Getting a follower is important, because the Bleak Falls Barrow questline will require me to kill a Draugr in order to complete the quest. We could argue that you can't kill what's already dead, but for the sake of the extra challenge, we'll avoid getting into this. Anything you kill is still a kill, no matter whether it's undead or a ghost or anything of the sort. To make a start on getting that 100 gold, I get rewarded some studded Imperial armor from talking to the Jarl.
Jarl of
One moment.
will view that as a provocation. He'll
One
assume we're
moment.
preparing to join Ulfric's side and attack
One
him.
moment.
We should
Enough!
And I sell this for 41 gold. I then sell the 12 lockpicks I was given for the additional 12 gold. This ends up being a stupid decision, as you'll eventually find out later on. Now that we have gold, the first thing we need to spend it on is at the inn, since the first day of the week is a Sunday, which is a day of rest. From this point onwards, we'll try and rest the moment a Sunday comes. In this case, we get a pass because we had no opportunity to rest until now. I do a few things to gather some gold, like helping Adrian Avanishi with the forge. I get given some gold and get to keep a dagger and a helmet. After selling all of that and one leftover iron ingot, I end up with a total of 79 gold. Without realizing how challenging it would be, I help Carlotta by telling Mikkel to stop propositioning her. In order to try and improve our skills and practice for the brawl against Hrothgar, I challenge Mikkel to a brawl. We won't be killing him, so we are safe. Since the commandment clearly says, "Thou shalt not kill," not "Thou shalt not pummel the living crap out of someone." Unfortunately, on our first attempt, we get absolutely destroyed. On the second attempt, at the time I found the best strategy was to do a quick punch and move back. It wasn't consistent though, so once my health got low, I just ran to the top and jumped on top of the scaffolding of the building and waited for my health to recharge. Eventually, when his health was really low, I spammed the punch button and managed to win the brawl just before my health was about to reach 0. We end up getting 250 gold. This gives us not only way more than enough to brawl Hrothgar, but also get some equipment that might help us against her. On the way I get asked for 1 coin by the kid Lucia. Since we are a good Christian, I give that 1 coin so I get exactly 100 gold left. I actually discovered that you're allowed to use a shield in a brawl. That said, by not fighting her barehanded, I consider this a form of deception on the agreement, and choose to go through the painstaking effort of fighting barehanded. While fighting her, I discover the best strategy was by circling around a bench, and get many shots in. Her hits became much easier to dodge as a result, since her movements became more predictable. Eventually, I managed to beat her and earn her as my follower. This means that any enemy I need to kill, she will do all the killing for me, and I won't end up breaking the commandment. I then decide to take most of the stuff she doesn't use, which I can sell. Since she is giving this to us consensually, we aren't breaking any commandments. I couldn't find a trader that would take the silver ring, so I quickly fast traveled to Riverwood and sold it to Luke and Valerius. I then buy a hide armor and a hide helmet, which in hindsight, I realized I probably shouldn't have sold the helmet I already crafted. I then accept the quest to look for the Golden Claw. Now that I have a follower, it means that I have a way of defeating enemies without killing anyone. But it wasn't as simple as I thought. I didn't realize until after I watched some videos that having your follower kill still counts as killing for you. At least according to the metrics anyway. There's a workaround where if you dismiss them, and they kill someone after that, it doesn't count, which may come in handy. I saw guides that attempted to get through the game without killing, but most of them actually relied on magic. So we may have trouble getting far in the game without killing at all. Only time will tell, but I've decided I'm not going to use the metrics to decide whether I've succeeded at not killing anyone. I will try and abide by it for as long as I can, but since in real life having someone following you and kill someone without you giving any orders isn't something that would actually be killing, I personally won't consider it a breach of the rule if it ever needs to come to that in this game. I make my way to Bleakfall's temple and manage to get in before my follower kills anyone. I manage to get rid of enemies in my way by dismissing her near enemies and baiting them into fighting her. We get to the point where we have to take the Golden Claw, and taking a Golden Claw requires us to loot a dead body. This would be considered stealing, if not for the fact that it doesn't belong to Arvel, and we already accepted a quest to return the Golden Claw to the original owner, so as long as we complete this quest, this rule is not broken. I managed to get my follower to kill some of the enemies, and also lure some of the enemies into traps so that they end up getting killed. One thing that I didn't realise was that my follower can actually get killed. As a result of this, I debated whether it would be stealing if I took her armour. She was my follower after all. I decided that since she refused to trade the stuff, I never get explicit permission to loot it from her corpse, and for that reason, I just load an older save from when she was still alive. I move a safe distance away from enemies and I tell her to wait, and then lure the enemies to their deaths by baiting them into traps. I technically could have gotten through the whole dungeon by just luring them into traps, but having a follower saved me so much time. This becomes especially the case when we reach the point where it's quicker for her to leave through the other side of the dungeon. She actually headed towards the objectives when we parted ways with her as a follower, although she gets very confused when she reaches the door that requires the Golden Claw. Eventually the game also got confused and just decided to teleport her. I'm guessing they just took her straight home, but I don't know for sure, but I loaded into an earlier save so we got her back. She walks straight up to the Draugr Overlord. Now we need to make sure he doesn't kill her, so if she gets downed, we distract him for a bit and skillfully dodge his moves until she gets back up to fight him again. Despite us needing to actually do this before, we actually ended up not needing to do this, as she actually managed to beat him without problem. You know what is a problem though? The fact that we need to loot the Dragonstone. Since we're looting something that technically doesn't belong to us, but is on a dead body, we need to decide whether or not this is considered stealing. We might be able to justify it based on the fact that it's technically ordered by the Jarl of Whiterun, since he told us to talk to someone else who told us to take the Dragonstone. But even so, whether or not this is stealing is still a bit of a grey area. Our follower also refuses to loot it, and this is because followers can't loot bodies. So we seem to be forced to take this Dragonstone. Unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, there is truly no way around this, so we have no choice but to take the Dragonstone. I decided that I will revisit the topic of whether this is considered stealing at the end of the video once we finish the challenge. I ended up forgetting to return the Golden Claw and just went straight to Whiterun, but once I get the chance to, I'll return it. I finished the quest to return the Dragonstone, then witnessed the Jarl being told about a dragon.
My lord.
Not now.
Tell him what
Not
you told
now.
me about the
Not
dragon.
now. Not now.
Oh, that's right.
Not now.
We saw it coming from
Not
the
now.
south. It was fast.
Not now.
Faster than anything.
Not
I could ever
now.
see.
What did it do? Is it attacking the watchtower? Not now.
He rewards us with an armor piece with an enchantment on it. I've decided to consider this a form of magic too, so wearing these would mean that we would breach one of the commandments. We go to fight the dragon, or at least I watch others fight it. And sadly, it is during this part that we witness Hrothgar the Unbroken get broken.
It's all over.
She does a good job at speeding up the process of killing the dragon, but sadly she couldn't survive the whole thing. After pushing Irileth out of cover, being the only essential NPC fighting the dragon, she manages to beat it in a 1v1 standoff. It is from here that I decide to finally return the Golden Claw before claiming our reward from the Jarl. But before we even return the claw, already a courier travels to us, and we receive a 270 gold inheritance for the death of Hrothgar. Since we consensually took the key from her by legal means, we can pretty much consider her house ours. After returning the claw, we go back to Whiterun and get called by the Greybeards on the way. We give the good news to the Jarl about slaying the dragon. We become Thane and get our replacement follower, Lydia. However, this won't last long. We make our way to Hrothgar. We make our way to Hrothgar, but decide to do this by taking the carriage to Riften and make our way to Hrothgar from there. I'll get into why later. On our way to Ivarstead, we get attacked by wolves. At this point, we are still level 1, so actually escaping them is not simple by any means. To make matters worse, it's here that the game decided to spawn the event for the vampires attacking in relation to the Dawnguard questline. Through nothing short of a miracle, we hop, skip and jump our way to safety. Unfortunately, at some point, Lydia killed an animal, and since we're choosing to abide by the metrics for now, until we have no other choice but to ignore them, we have to load a previous save and then tell Lydia to get lost so that we can carry on by ourselves. This time, I managed to make it to Ivarstead without being harmed by just swimming there. We then climb up the 7,000 steps. We get attacked by a few wolves on the way, but luckily no vampires felt like interfering with our journey this time. I ended up climbing up to the same platform that the scripted troll is on, and it turns out it has absolutely no idea what to do in this scenario, and seems to just fall off. Once we meet the Greybeards, it is here that we use our first shout. As stated before, I decided that shouts don't count as magic, since they're not originated from the god of magic, which means that it therefore doesn't break the commandment of worshipping any false gods. We do as the Greybeards ask and perform the shouts necessary, then get given the quest to retrieve the horn of Jurgen Windcaller. I decide that in order to level up, I need to do the infamous trick with the Greybeards to increase my sneak skill. I fast travel to Whiterun so that I can buy a dagger, but as I arrive, the cultists from the Dragonborn questline decide to attack me, but thankfully, all the guards in Whiterun rally to my defense. I then buy myself a dagger and repeatedly stab one of the Greybeards until my sneak skill reaches rank 100, and jump from level 1 to level 18. This is allowed, since after all, it says thou shalt not kill, not thou shalt not stab someone until they should theoretically be dead by now, but are somehow still alive. Now that we are above level 14, we fast travel back to Riften, and then we can recruit Majol?
Imjol the Lioness.
Mjol the Lioness.
Which one is it? Is it Mjol or Mjol? I'm going with Mjol, because Mjol just sounds really stupid. It's here that we recruit Mjol the Lioness as a follower, by agreeing to find her sword called Grimsever. The reason I want her as a follower is because she is an essential NPC. I thought that followers like Lydia and Hrothgar wouldn't be able to die because they were considered protected NPCs, and I thought that meant only the player could kill them, but it turns out it just decreases the likelihood of them dying. To my knowledge, Mjol is the only essential follower you can recruit that either doesn't require completing the Thieves Guild or Dark Brotherhood questline, or any of the DLCs. Before we head off, I realise it's Sunday morning, so I go and rest in the inn called the Bee and the Barb. We take a carriage to Dawnstar in order to be near where the sword is located. Then make our way to... Oh, for goodness sake, I'm not pronouncing that! With my character having the 100 sneak, I have a much easier time being able to sneak past enemies and avoid fighting. I do get chased by a dragon and a few wolves, but I manage to lose them with ease and get inside the ruins. I then sneak past all the enemies in the ruins, solve a simple gate puzzle, and enter the depths. And we successfully make our way to the gatehouse. Unfortunately, there's a dwarven centurion guardian that is guarding the weapon. I end up just taking it and getting out of there. I give Mjol the Grimsever, and we now have an essential follower, and spare Lydia from having to risk dying. We take some stuff from her inventory, and sell it to get some extra gold, and also take her house key. We could take Grimsever and sell it for a lot of gold, and while we do have consent and this doesn't break the rules, for immersion reasons I've chosen not to do this, since she became our follower precisely because we returned her this weapon. Now we can head to retrieve the horn of Jurgen Windcaller, and it turns out the ruins I entered before is quite close to this location, so we fast travel there and then make our way towards retrieving the horn. On the way, we end up fighting an ice wraith. Yet from out of nowhere, Aaron decides to join us. He almost dies, but manages to barely fend for himself. I have no idea what caused him to come over here, but he is considered a friend of Mjol, but there's no dialogue that happens or anything after this. He just walks off and leaves me with confusion. We then enter Ustengrav, and a very interesting encounter ensues. I attempt to get Mjol to kill them after dismissing her as a follower, but it doesn't work out. But then on the second attempt, Aaron decides to appear out of nowhere again, and helps her in the fight. He ends up dying, the sorcerer resurrects him as a corpse, and he fights Mjol. Mjol eventually defeats them after I distract them for a bit, so she isn't constantly being knocked down. What's useful about Mjol is that after dismissing her, she says a much longer statement than normal followers. This means that we have quite a bit of time to lure some enemies towards her while she's in the middle of talking, so that she ends up fighting. Because while she's talking, she doesn't walk away. There's nothing much more to say about this part, and we managed to get the mysterious note without killing anyone. After getting the mysterious note instead of the horn, we head to Riverwood and meet Delphine. We take the carriage to Windhelm in order to make the journey to Kyne's Grove easier. With Delphine and Mjol teaming up, they managed to take out the dragon without my help without any issues whatsoever. After that, we need to head to the Thalmor Embassy. We give the stuff we want to get smuggled over there, and then travel there in disguise. For the part where we need to create a distraction, in order to prevent ourselves from lying, the most honest route to take is to give a drink to Rozalen and ask him to create a distraction. Now we have a problem. We need to get past all these soldiers, and our follower isn't with us. It sounds simple with the sneak skill we have, but to make matters worse, this section before entering the building seems rigged to have enemies spot me despite having maximum sneak. Thankfully, by crouching right before entering the building, they didn't follow me in, and no one inside the building was alerted to me. But we've hit another obstacle. It turns out that in order to continue the quest, we have to get past this door that has expert level lockpicking. Taking the key would be considered stealing, whereas breaking into a place that isn't ours isn't considered stealing. It's definitely not something a Christian should do, but it's not stated in the 10 Commandments. If we break in using the lockpick instead of taking the key, this means that we can go in without stealing something or breaking any of the commandments. Remember when I said that selling my lockpicks was stupid? Yeah, this is why. I had to load an older save so I could buy a lockpick and return to this point. During this time, Sunday comes again, and we use this day as a day of rest. After progressing back to the point I was at before, after many attempts, I managed to pick the expert lock with the one lockpick I have. I open up the chest, and instead of actually taking a Thalmor dossier on Esbern, I'm able to simply read it, and it triggers the next part of the quest. Unfortunately, it's from this point onwards that we're stuck. Like, very stuck. In order to get the key, one of the guards needs to be killed, and since our follower didn't come in with us, we can't use her to help kill them. The people there that are willing to help fight simply aren't anywhere near strong enough to kill one person, especially if they're being attacked by loads of people at once. Pickpocketing also doesn't work if we wanted to resort to just stealing. In other guides, they use spells to turn them against each other, but that is not a tactic we can use since we can't use magic. So it's during this point we have a choice to do one of two things. We can break 2 commandments by killing one of them and then looting from their body, which would also count as stealing, or we could teach ourselves a spell to turn the enemies against each other, and this way we only break 1 commandment. Unfortunately, there is absolutely no way around this. Except there is. I didn't think this would work, but I backtracked and did the old trick where you whirlwind sprint through a basket or bucket in order to clip through a door. In this case, there are 3 doors that require a key that I needed to get past. There was a basket in the rooms in between 2 of them, so I could get through them without actually needing to take the basket, and instead just drag it to the position. I thought that I would have to steal at least once when I got to this tiny room, since there weren't any baskets or buckets in here. But I attempted to clip through with this goblet that I found, expecting it not to work, but it actually worked on my first attempt. I then exited out of the building, and I found Mjol here to accompany me. It was also very bizarre, because the Thalmor here would sometimes be hostile, and sometimes not. There was even a point where they went ham on Mjol and tried to kill me, but they randomly just stopped and left both of us alone. This was what shocked me. I took Mjol's battle axe, and was able to use it to clip through the gate that was blocking our way out. And to my surprise, the quest actually updated. I thought that it was going to be a case where I might be able to leave the area, but even then the quest would be stuck on this stage. But it turns out the moment the game recognizes you're no longer at the embassy, it triggers the next part of the quest and says that you've successfully escaped. This means that we successfully got out of the Thalmor Embassy without killing or stealing in this part. We tell Delphine what we learned, recover our equipment, and head back to Riften to find Esbern. Now, we can actually go through Brynjolf's quest without having to steal, as if we fail to do the quest line will continue as normal. There's only one problem. I have to actually agree to do the stealing. If I then proceed not to steal, this breaks the commandment of lying. So instead of bothering this at all, I just go straight to the Ragged Flagon and find Esbern. I take a shortcut and let a lowlife follow me in. Mjolnir tries to kill him when I hadn't dismissed her yet, but luckily she falls in the water, and I block her from getting any more hits in while the Thieves Guild members completely overwhelm him, preventing me from getting credited with the kill. We then make our way to the location of where Esbern is, and Mjolnir has no problem taking care of the enemies. We find Esbern, and the next part of the quest automatically triggers, and we're able to completely skip having to do anything with Brynjolf. Now annoyingly, Esbern counts as a temporary follower for this part. This means that if he kills someone, it counts as our kill according to the metrics. I tried to get him to wait, and then dismiss Mjolnir and let her take care of the enemies. But no matter how long I waited, she simply couldn't take them on due to her not having good enough equipment. The weakest one there kept being ignored once he got weak enough. And then he would keep spotting Esbern and trying to attack him. Eventually, I decided to reload and then quickly exit the area before they attempt to jump Esbern. They then jump him in the next area, but I run like my life depends on it, and exit to the Ragged Flagon. For some reason, Esbern follows me whenever I go through a door, but not my follower. Once I get the first opportunity, I fast travel to Riverwood, and here both Esbern and my follower join me, and I check my stats to see that I managed to escape before either of them killed someone. We return to Delphine, and Esbern tells us we need to head to Skyhaven Temple.
Patience, give me a moment. Patience, give me a moment. Patience.
For this part, we get both of them following us, but I can tell Esbern that I'll meet him there, and they end up leaving. This is good, as it means I won't get any kills if they decide they want to kill someone. Riverwood ends up getting attacked by a dragon, but I run away like a baby, and fast travel to Whiterun Stables before she can get the chance. We take a carriage to Markarth, since that's the closest to Skyhaven Temple. I rush to Karthspire, and just hope that Mjolnir doesn't kill someone by the time I get inside. With the help of dismissing my follower, and having Esbern and Delphine fight without it counting as my kill, we make it to Alduin's Wall. After that whole ordeal, we head to see the Greybeards to see if we can learn a shout that can defeat a dragon. Up until now, I never actually got round to returning the Horn of Jurgen Windcaller, so this automatically happens first, and then I learn the last word of the Unrelenting Force shout. After having a bit of an argument, I'm told to go to Paarthurnax, and I learn the shout needed to reach him. Our follower almost falls a very long way while fighting an ice wraith, one that would have been very painful if you're unable to die. So we use our Unrelenting Force shout to kindly put her back to safety. She takes quite a while to kill two of them, but eventually manages to pull it off. She ends up getting stuck trying to fight an ice wraith, and I choose to carry on to meet Paarthurnax. After learning a shout from him, we find out that in order to learn a shout called Dragon Rend, we need to find an Elder Scroll. We then decide to head straight to the Tower of Mzark and not waste any time trying to figure out where the Elder Scroll is. But on the way there, we get threatened by a thief to hand over some gold. For the sake of simplicity, this will mark probably the first time ever that someone has actually obliged and not killed the thief after.
What a coward. Didn't even put up a proper fight.
By the time we arrive at our location, it is Sunday. Luckily, there is a bedroll we can use to rest on this day. I borrow Mjolnir's battle axe so I can clip through the door like I did last time. This way I can enter through the way you normally exit from the Tower of Mzark. Unfortunately, this doesn't work. I try using other objects, but to no avail. I think at some point this glitch was patched. In the end, I use another glitch that's a lot more difficult to pull off, where you crouch and go through the wall on the left, an inch far in enough to just be able to press the cog to take you down to the lower floor. This took a long time to do, but eventually I achieved this. The reason I decide to glitch my way through this section is because of how difficult and tedious it would be to get past everything up until this point and avoid killing anyone. I arrive there, only for me to realise that I forgot that I need to take a blank lexicon from Septimus Signus. Don't judge me, alright? I haven't played Skyrim in a long time. On the plus side, we can at least open the door so that we don't have to pull off that insane glitch again. We go to Septimus, take the lexicon from him, then head back to the Tower of Mzark. After all these years, I still had the pattern of the puzzle ingrained into my head, and without using a guide, I managed to obtain the Elder Scroll. I tried to get my follower to take it, and she would say that she is able to, but end up not being able to reach the area. so I had to take it myself. But since this Elder Scroll doesn't seem to be in the possession of anyone else, this is almost definitely not considered stealing. Before reading the Elder Scroll, I decided to give the lexicon to Septimus, as I felt like it would be considered a form of lying if I agreed to transcribe the lexicon and don't give it back. I decided to consider that a fulfillment of my end of the bargain, not only because doing his next quest would require me to harvest blood from enemies, but also because I couldn't be bothered. On a side note, I absolutely hate the wretched abyss that appears here. He talks slowly, and you can't skip his dialogue, so it takes forever to get past this part. I go to the throat of the world, but before I open the scroll, I realise my follower isn't here, whose help I will need. Technically, I'm allowed to fight Alduin myself, since he won't die, but I'm not anywhere near as strong enough to deal with him alone. I reckon that I told her to wait somewhere by accident, so I wait 3 days, rest on Sunday, until she leaves my service, then pick her up at Riften. I then head to the throat of the world and open the Elder Scroll. I learn Dragonrend during the flashback. We then fight Alduin, and this fight was very painful for me, as I didn't get any good weapons for my character due to lacking in gold, and also not having any need of one until now. Eventually, I found the best strategy was to never let Alduin get up, and keep using Dragonrend while he was down. I had some problems with the meteors hitting me, so I would also run to the other side of the mountain, as that pretty much guaranteed not getting hit by the meteors. Eventually, his health gets low enough that I can hack and slash him to the brink of death with my iron dagger. After defeating him, he flees the scene, and the metrics still say I haven't killed anyone. Paarthurnax then tells me I need to persuade Jarl Ulfric to let me use Dragon's Reach to trap a dragon. He refuses unless I can temporarily stop the civil war. So I ask the Greybeards to host a council, and they reluctantly agree. My next job is to get General Tullius and Ulfric Stormcloak to agree to attend the council meeting. But there's one little problem. Intentional or not, the game forces you to go through the dialogue of joining their faction. Why is this a problem? Well, if I agree to serve both the Stormcloaks and the Imperials, I am breaking the commandment of lying, because I can't agree to serve one without neglecting the other. There's thankfully one way around this. When speaking to Ulfric Stormcloak, instead of saying that I am here to serve the Stormcloaks, I can pick the option of saying that I escaped with Ralof, and he said he would vouch for me. We aren't being untruthful in this statement, because we're not explicitly agreeing to join the Stormcloaks, so we're not lying by refusing to serve them after this. If we went with Hrothgar instead, I assume we'd be able to use this workaround for the Imperials. I'm able to persuade Ulfric to agree to attend the council meeting. I then go to General Tullius, and somehow, this time, instead of being forced to say that I'm ready to serve the Empire, he actually changes his dialogue so that he instantly recognizes me, and tells me the Empire could use me. And this time the game gives me the option to say, that's not why I'm here, and I get him to agree to attend the council meeting. This means that I got both sides to agree without explicitly siding with anyone in particular. While this wasn't necessary to avoid breaking the commandments entirely, it is still somewhat important, because it means we can act completely neutral and not let either side feel deceived in some way. I ended up going for the completely neutral option, so both sides are equally happy. Jarl Ulfric then agrees to let me trap a dragon in Dragon's Reach. I get the shout to call the dragon, then Delphine asks me to kill Paarthurnax. Not only do I not feel like going through the trouble of killing him, but I don't want to kill him. And anyone who has agreed to kill Paarthurnax, you have no soul. I do nothing in response to this, and just head straight to Dragon's Reach, and get ready to capture the dragon. Out of my good Christian heart, I attempt to save the Whiterun guard that normally gets killed by the dragon, but to no avail. We capture the dragon, and he takes me to— oh, for goodness sake. I manage to sprint my way safely into the temple. I then solve the first puzzle while sneaking without any trouble. I do end up having trouble with a Draugr blocking my way. He ends up being really stubborn and refusing to move even when he spots me. So I have to use the shout to get him to get lost. Just for the fun of it, I then use another shout to skip the second puzzle. Unfortunately, we hit a roadblock where we have to get the diamond claw to get past a door, and a Draugr has it. We can get the claw without killing the Draugr by just using a trap, but we run into the problem where we have to loot it from his body. Unfortunately, we don't have the justification we did before with the Dragonstone, and taking this claw from the Draugr would be an outright violation of the stealing rule. Unfortunately, there is no way around this, and we won't be able to get through the temple without breaking this rule. So naturally, the solution is to skip the temple altogether. I wanted to avoid doing a skip where I'd have to loot someone's bucket, which is how other guides attempted a no-kill run. So I do a skip where you have to climb up a mountain and walk around the outer side of it to get to the portal to Sovngarde. Frankly, I cannot believe I made it this far. I made it all the way to Sovngarde, with so far only one of the commandments potentially being broken. But now we are in the endgame. and this was the part I was dreading the most. Those of you that have seen any other no-kill run will know why, but for the rest of you, you'll see why soon. I end up having to fight someone called, give me strength. After struggling for a bit, I eventually managed to trick him into falling down the waterfall in order to win. This doesn't actually kill him either, because he teleports to the bridge after the fight. At long last, we have the final fight against Alduin. This was much easier than the last one, because there was a skeleton structure I could stay under, and then the meteors failed to hit me. Then I could just spam Dragon Ren from here until the others kill him. If only it were that simple. This is why I was dreading this part. I already learned this from watching other YouTubers attempt to beat Skyrim without killing anything. Alduin can have all of his health taken from him, but in order for him to die, the final attack has to be from the player. This means that beating the main story is impossible without killing at least once. I tried everything the guides tried, and I tried a few new things myself. My main idea that ended up not working was to do an attack and save before it lands, then load that save. But the attack either never finished, or when it does finish, it knows to credit the kill to the player. Unfortunately, nothing worked, and even if it did, I would still consider this a breach of the commandment. Since just because the metrics wouldn't have shown it, we know for a fact that the creature died from something we did directly. As a result, I had no choice but to break the commandment, confirming our failure to follow the 10 commandments. With great reluctance, I end Alduin's life by punching him squarely in the jaw. I think the Lord is trying to tell me something. We defeat Alduin, speak to this guy so that I can leave, and with that, we have beaten the main story of Skyrim. So let's assess how we did. Rule 1 was that we don't be positively affected by anything linked to a false god, including magic, and we managed to do this successfully. We got through the entire game without using any magic. We only ended up using shouts, which as established before, aren't linked to the god of magic. This means that we successfully met commandments 1 and 2. Rule number 2 was to sleep in a bed when it was Sunday. This was not a hard rule to follow at all, and we managed to follow it without problem. It was only a little bit tedious here and there, which means that we successfully followed commandment number 4. Rule number 3 was don't kill, which we were able to follow up until the very end. And frankly, I am amazed we made it that far, because I know other guides had done it before, but they didn't suffer the restrictions that I did. But sadly, as all the other guides and challenge runs had done, we failed to follow this rule at the very end when we had to fight Alduin, and as a result, we failed to follow commandment number 6. Rule number 4 was the grey area. We had to not take anything that would be considered stealing in real life. The only grey area instance was when I took the Dragonstone and looted it from a dead body. At the time, I decided to consider it not stealing, just for the time being. After performing some research, I found out that the words written on the wall could be translated to, "Here lies the guardian keeper of the Dragonstone, and a force of eternal rage and darkness." Since the Draugr is referred to as the keeper of the Dragonstone, this means that no matter who gave us orders to take it, this Dragonstone was made to be the Draugr's property. And that's why I consider Rule 4 to be broken, which means that we have failed to follow commandment number 8. Lastly, rule number 5 was don't lie. This one was also easy to follow. We only had a few obstacles here and there, and none of them were that challenging. This means that Skyrim is possible to beat while following 8 of the 10 commandments, but unfortunately, it is impossible to beat without breaking 2 of them. This video took a long time to put together, but I had a lot of fun doing it. When it comes to my YouTube channel, it has been really difficult for me to do something productive and actually get round to finishing and making a video to upload. But I'm really glad I got to put this one together, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please give a thumbs up on the video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. I also want to give a massive thank you to Haya for supporting my Patreon after all this time. It really does mean a lot to me. I would ask you guys to support me on Patreon, but for the time being, I have actually paused billing because I haven't been very productive on animation work lately, and I don't think it's fair to charge anyone while this is the case. If you really are interested in supporting me, then do keep an eye out on it, because once I get started on some animation stuff again, I'll unpause the billing on my Patreon. Well, that's it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and peace out.